Hello, this is Holly Sin with Sacred Seeds Yoga School, and I'm going to show you today how we really support alignment, anatomy, first and foremost. That is the template, the structure, the base from which we start to go into the art form of elemental yoga with seasonal yoga and applying these elements as we go through the year. So I'm coming to you live from my home studio. So glad you're here. So glad for you to join me. Let's get started with a pose that often causes people some pain and some angst. Cobra pose. So Cobra pose, typically people don't engage enough in the buttocks. So what we have going on here is internal rotation. That's the biggest part as well. And the internal rotation is the rolling in of the thighs. If I were to roll out, my toes would kind of come out and my inner thighs would start to come against the mat. I feel that here in my low back, in my sacrum, my SI joint, it starts to close that joint and maybe even irk it a little bit as the bones come closer together. So we're wanting the opposite of that in this pose to support us and to keep the SI joint nice and free and open. So what I'm going to do, you can do this with your head down too. I'm just trying to allow you to see me as I speak. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to roll so that the outer part of my thighs start to maybe come towards the mat. And then the inner part of my thighs start to roll towards each other and up towards the ceiling. And then my little toes might even almost touch the mat. And I already have that good structure in my legs, and that's what's going to help me get a little higher in Cobra. Now we want to help even more with the pelvis and the tilt of the pelvis. So oftentimes what we'll say is to tuck the tailbone. And here we definitely want to tuck the tailbone. And you can see it fairly dramatically. I'm really going after it. And then also pushing a little bit forward, pushing the pubic bone into the mat. And so if I were to come up without any help with my hands, and I just did the leg motion, I have the internal rotation, outer thighs rolling towards the mat, and the inner thighs rolling up towards the ceiling. My little toes are actually touching the mat. They may not for you, but they're in that direction. They're engaged, my legs, my femur bones. And then I'm going to push my pelvis, tuck my tailbone and push my pelvis into the mat. That's going to engage my core a little more too. So when I start to come up, I keep and maintain that. And I come up with that strength and support in my legs. Let me show you that again a few times. I come up with an inhale, keeping all of that engaged. And then I'm going to release on an exhale. I'm going to do that 3 times. And then what I do to fully release is maybe walk my legs wide and relax and release the sacrum, the hips. So I've got all the alignment cues in my legs. I've got the tuck of the tailbone, and I'm going to flow up a couple of times, 3 times. And then resting. Now I'm going to show you how that supports, and I'm going to press into my hands and lift a little higher. But what helps me lift so high in the back bend is, again, all of what we just did, right? So I'm not using my arm muscles so much. They're just gentle stacking structures, but they're not pushing and creating a push. It's all coming from the strength of my legs, the engagement of my pelvis, and the strength of my core. This is pretty phenomenal when someone starts to do this pose from the pelvis leg strength versus from the arm strength, because then you won't be hurting or pushing into your low back as much. Now for the artful friends that want to know or see and are curious about how potentially to start to play with this elementally. If I were going to do this for an earth practice, I would do it in several ways. There's one way, it's almost a different pose, I know, but still. You're going to just lift the legs. You can do that with the hands down on the mat. So rather in the Cobra, down on the mat, you're engaging, it's the same alignment, and you're lifting just the legs off. And it's a different pose, but it's getting that same alignment, tucking the tailbone, and giving more energy to your feet, resting your chest. If I were going to just do the Cobra, I might come instead and ground into the Sphinx. This could be for earth or water. We're a little more grounded, elbows right underneath you. We still, again, want the rotation, tuck, and that helps the lift and support without compromising the low back. So those are two ways you can do it earthy, and one way you can do it watery. Another watery one is to stay low, focus, that will give more energy to the lower back versus the upper back, just like we did, and flow. There's another one I do for water that gets right into the kidneys, right into the space, where you go side to side with a flow. Depending on people's levels and their ability, their capability of holding that Cobra up, you could do just one side and then down, then the other side and then down, or you could go like I just did, both sides then down, or you could continuously go back and forth, keeping up for a while, which is quite a challenge and a strength of the kidney line, water line. All right. The big back bend is also really good for water because the back line all the way up is a water line, getting into that back bend, and I'm super engaged in my buttocks. So that could be a watery way. All right. Fire doesn't really come into it, but you could do a version of this that's almost like a bow pose, but not quite, where you start to lift here, or even stay on the Manipura and try to lift your legs. So you can play a little bit with that, or even full bow pose. So grabbing the feet and coming up. Again, a different pose, but you can find some preparatory Cobra to come into that, and maybe you keep that internal rotation. When I internally rotate, my legs, or my feet start to splay out. Okay. Fire. With our air. And for that one, I would keep it a little bit in those ranges of much more earth and water. You saw how I could play with fire, air, and the space. Not as much would I play with this in a strong way. It would be incorporated in flows, that kind of thing. All right, take care, travel well. Keep subscribing to this channel. I'll keep giving both alignment cues so you start to align better with your yoga practice, as well as ways to make your poses part of that elemental, artful expression